Hi everybody, welcome to AI TV. My name is Nick Bradshaw, I'm the host, and it gives me great pleasure to be broadcasting to you today from AI Expo Africa 2021 online. We've taken the show online again this year because of the global pandemic, but the great thing about being online means that we can welcome people from all over the world, all at the same time. And we're very lucky this year to have had support from our event partner, Intel, who've helped make this show possible. They've got a booth, they've given keynotes, they've got talks going on at the show. So do make sure you join us for that. But it's great to have their support to make this show possible in the current climate that we're all enduring. So I'd like to introduce two key members of the Intel team that are with us at the moment. We've got Bienvenido and Anshul, who join us from the Intel team. Bienvenido, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Thank you very much, Nick, and pleased to be here. My name is Dr. Bienvenido Soglo, and I am the Director, Government Affairs Africa, and the EMEA CTO Liaison at Intel Corporation. Well, in this role, I'm responsible for developing policy strategies and advocating for favorable government policies, regulation, and standards to support Intel's business interests in Africa. I lead the policy and government affairs work in Africa in areas such as 5G, broadband, AI, right, as we're talking about it right now, privacy and security, and other digital transformation policies. In addition to that, I also lead engagement with universities, research institutions, NGOs in Europe, Middle East, and Africa for research that are focused on emerging technologies and project initiatives at the intersection of policy and technology. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Bienvenido. And Anshul, would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers of AI TV?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. And thanks for the wonderful opportunity. I hope the conference is going very well. My name is Anshul Sonak. I'm based in Singapore. I am a principal engineer and global director for Intel's Digital Readiness program. The charter over here is to really build a trusted private partnerships with governments around the world. As digitalization is increasing, especially after COVID, people side, the digital readiness of all human beings side is very core to Intel's corporate purpose. And hence, we have a very strong commitment to make technology fully inclusive and expand digital readiness for all. And that can be done only through a deep, trusted public-private partnerships. And that is what I drive. I build programs so that countries around the world build public-private partnerships with governments and academia to address some of the core human digital readiness issues with the government around emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anshul. I mean, I'm a big fan of looking at change, both in the company and at society level. And before you make any change, understanding, are you ready to make that change is a key step towards success. Do you want to tell us a little bit then about the Intel Digital Readiness Program? It sounds very interesting. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so as I said, I mean, Intel's corporate purpose, right? Creating world-changing technologies that enriches all life across the planet. Over there, it's very important that with digitalization, digital readiness of people increases. Now, the digital readiness in today's context is a combination of three things. We need skills. People need skills with all this emerging technology to be successful. The second, people need more trust on technologies, right? With the way we live, the way we work and play and everything changing, people have to have more trust on the technology capabilities to deliver human benefits back. So that's the second point. And the third, most importantly, the premium has shifted from what I know to what I can do in order to remain competitive at an individual level and at a country level. So responsible usage. So digital readiness from a human being standpoint is a combination of more skill, more trust, and more responsible usage. Now, how do we do it, especially in context of artificial intelligence and all the emerging technologies, when we know that the job market and the whole lives are changing so rapidly, right? And that's very core to countries' competitiveness. It's critical to Intel growth, it's critical to government growth. And that's why it's a shared value initiative. So when we think about Intel Digital Readiness Program, we really build a comprehensive set of programs which are trusted public-private partnership solutions for the governments, whereby we provide content, technology expertise, trainings, And then government can put infrastructure, government can put up a scalable, sustainable policies and on-ground teaching learning practices and things like that. And a typical non-technical, broader inclusive audience, if you think about it, right? All these skills are available today with either high-tech companies or with these big universities. What happens to the normal job? What happens to the average people around the world, right? So this is where we have a whole range of programs created to exactly address that non-technical, but a very important engine of growth, human capital of the country. So that's why we have programs like AI for citizens for creating public awareness, AI for youth, which is for the high school skilling, creating a long-term pipeline for country for AI. Then we have a program for workforce preparation, AI for current workforce, for upskilling and reskilling, and AI for future workforce, which goes into the vocational colleges and technical education to prepare future workforce of the country. And last but probably very important, preparing government leaders themselves on all these emerging technologies. So we have a program called Digital Readiness for Leaders, so that we can prepare them or help them become ready with all these new technologies like artificial intelligence and so on and so forth. So this is our corporate digital readiness portfolio, and we have a strategic commitment at a company level that by 2030, we really want to partner with 30 countries and have 30,000 institutions ready so that we can have 30 million people ready for current and future jobs. So that's a very, very important milestone which we are working on. And that milestone cannot be done alone. It requires trusted public-private partnerships with all the governments around the world. And that's why we are very excited to be here talking to South Africa and larger African governments and ecosystem for innovation. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sanshul. I mean that's quite an ambitious program, and I think, you know, when you look at technology adoption, you have to understand your level of readiness to understand where you've got gaps to ensure that, you know, the program, the change program at the individual level, the company level, or the societal level, government level, is going to end in success. If we look at the country and continental level engagement in Africa, Bienvenido, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I mean, as you know, Africa is big, right? Very big continent, 1.3 billion people, right? Very young population. In fact, in Africa, we have been working, right, engaging with partners such as Smart Africa. And Smart Africa is a Pan-African organization with the vision to transform Africa into a single digital market. So what we're doing with them is to build the capacity of African decision makers on digital readiness for leaders that is focused on security in AI, AI policy, and AI use cases, just to name a few. But in terms of policy, right, we are advocating for an AI policy framework that should focus or consider a certain number of aspects. For example, number one, an AI strategy or framework should be considered as part of a wider national strategy. That's number one. Number two, it is important to find balance between AI enabling environment and the associated ethical and legal governance challenges, right? Number three, we need funding, right? So it is important to intensify funding, perform research on AI so that AI will become, you know, a rising star on the continent. Data, very critical for AI. So we need to look at how we can increase the use of non-traditional data. Having said the above, we have to look at the ecosystem. So we have to look at how we empower the ecosystem to foster innovation and the development of AI. Now, Africa is big, and therefore we need to look at international and regional cooperations, and this to attract global investment and accelerate AI adoption. Looking at the African continent, we need to see which use cases are the ones that are relevant for the continent. So AI use cases are very important, and we can look at sectors such as agriculture, sectors such as healthcare, sectors such as energy and transportation, education, and financial services, for example. An important aspect is about the computing infrastructure, right? AI development will depend on the availability and uptake of secure data processing capabilities, such as those offered by cloud infrastructure. So I wanted to point out those key policy elements that are important to take into account. We had the opportunity, in fact, to work with Smart Africa as a member of the Smart Africa AI Working Group. And that working group was working on the development of a Pan-African AI blueprint. And we look forward, in fact, to work together with Smart Africa on the implementation. Implementation is very important on the implementation of this Pan-African AI blueprint once it is finalized. Finally, we are engaged in multiple countries across Africa, and we are in advanced stage of discussions for the implementation of our AI for future workforce, for example, in South Africa, in Kenya, and Ghana. For specific project on AI for youth, well, I'll leave my colleague Anshul to talk about it. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, Bienvenido. I mean, you know, Africa, I think the statistic is by 2030, we'll have the largest, youngest population under 25 of any continent. So AI for youth or AI and young people engaging with 4IR technologies, devices, systems and services is obviously going to be a potentially massive opportunity for the continent. Anshul, do you want to talk a little bit about the AI for Youth program that you've launched? And I think specifically is the launch in South Africa. Just correct me on that one.
Yeah, absolutely right. So as Bienvenido said, African continent, a younger continent, right? And today's student, today's youth are tomorrow's innovator. So the wealth creation has to come from younger generation, and also the problems which we have today around the world, healthcare, climate change, all these issues, younger generation have to have a capacity to use AI responsibly to solve the problems, right? So that's why governments around the world, when they form policies, AI skilling policy become a very important cornerstone in any national competitiveness discussion, right? Now, how do we really build it out for a long term, for the youth, for the next generation? Now, this is where this AI for Youth program comes in as a public-private partnership program, whereby the goal is to empower youth and the next generation innovator on both technical as well as social skills around artificial intelligence in a very responsible and inclusive ways, so that it can help address competitiveness, right? Now, what we do within this is, from a technical skill, we pick up some of the core skills which are required, like programming, coding at one side, but key AI skills like machine learning, deep learning, statistical data related skills, computer vision, then natural language processing, which is so important for a diverse continent like Africa. So that's technical skill coupled with social skills, responsible usage, ethical understanding, problem solving of AI, right? Removing biases. Now, these are some of the core issues which Africa have to really, put it on table if we have to become a global economic driver going forward for the younger population. So really bringing that capacity of tech skill and social skill in a responsible way, right? That's exactly what we are doing in this program by offering our content to the key government partners, training them, ensuring that they really create like a government center of excellence in the provinces and in the countries where this is getting implemented. So that has been our philosophy here. And we're very delighted that Intel Chief Strategy Officer has announced South Africa Gauteng province as our first implementation site. And Gauteng province, as we know, is economic hub. So it becomes even more important that you really start showing a power of artificial intelligence in the best possible, in the most responsive and the most inclusive ways possible. And that's why we are really starting over there. We are building up as a start with a few schools, 5 schools, and then with the public-private partnership model, we will replicate it in other places and hopefully more and more countries across the continent.
Thanks, Anshul. It's an amazing initiative. I mean, I'm very close to understanding, particularly in South Africa, our own research has indicated that the biggest concentration of companies and emerging companies and the need for skills is actually in the capital of South Africa, in the Gauteng, Pretoria region. So it's a great place to launch that initiative. If we come on to perhaps the final point to sort of wrap up on, I mean, we talk about strategy, we've talked about young people, we've talked about readiness to embrace these new technologies in what we all deem and call the fourth industrial revolution. But really at the end of the day, we need infrastructure. AI is generally, broadly, all about data. So what would you like to comment on in terms of things like infrastructure needs, the access to cloud? Bienvenido, would you like to sort of comment on that in terms of it with an African perspective?
Yeah, sure, Nick. And to your point, true, infrastructure is very key. But just to talk a little bit about the importance of AI, according to a recent study on the long-term economic impact of AI around the world, AI has the potential to double a country's GDP growth rate by 2035, right? Moreover, thanks to innovative technologies, AI applications have increasingly become more affordable through cloud computing and the leveraging of modern data centers. As a result, developing nations in a continent such as Africa can benefit from AI technological. However, AI will the availability and uptake of secure data processing capacities, such as those offered by cloud infrastructure and modern data centers. So these computing infrastructures would host, process, and use data, hence supporting the creation of data lakes, enabling data analytics and machine learning. AI solutions could be used in a variety of scenarios, from centralized applications to distributed deployment on smartphone or other devices. Now, enabling infrastructure from basic electrification to network coverage, cloud infrastructure, and modern data centers are fundamental to an effective distribution of AI solutions. So when we talk about the cloud infrastructure in Africa, a recent study actually shows that Africa accounts for less than 1% of the multi-tenant data center capacity globally. And most of the content, services, and applications consumed by Africans are hosted outside the continent. So cloud infrastructure related elements includes electricity, right? Fast and reliable broadband connectivity, backbone network, and so on. Furthermore, you have the cloud computing efficiency, which is dependent on broadband connectivity and performance. In fact, when we talk about broadband, an ITU study actually stated that broadband connection penetration on the continent in 2019 is 34%. That is very low compared to the world average of 53%. Therefore, it is urgent for African countries to accelerate the increase in access to high quality and high speed broadband. There we're looking at 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi 6E, fiber, and this to increase broadband penetration in Africa, and also in order to increase the AI deployment utilization of the continent. It is possible, right, in Africa to have universal access to connectivity. But the World Bank study said from 2020 to 2030, to reach that universal access to connectivity, we will need an investment of $100 billion US. And among those $100 billion US, 30 billion are for infrastructure deployment. And such infrastructure will require the deployment of 250,000 new 4G base stations and at least 250,000 kilometers of fibers across Africa, just to give you a little bit a view of the scale of what needs to be done. But we believe that with technological progress such as 5G, Wi-Fi 6E, high power computing infrastructure, they will play an important role in closing this infrastructure gap in Africa and foster the use of AI for the socioeconomic benefit for the citizens of Africa. Finally, what I want to say is that by investing in digital infrastructure, cloud, data centers, high power computing, Wi-Fi 6E, fiber, African government can unlock new growth opportunities by adopting a range of emerging technologies such as AI that are essential to enable youth innovation, youth ICT innovation, and foster AI adoption in Africa. Thank you, Nick.
Well, that's brilliant, Bienvenido. It's a great note to end on. I want to thank both of you for joining us today, just to give us these, well, brief but very important insights on the potential that exists here on the African continent. Certainly, I see the next decade as being a very positive one for the region. If we can align strategy with readiness and infrastructure and a global, a growing youth population, I think Africa has a very positive future in this regard. So I just want to say thank you very much to to you both for joining us today on AI TV, to thank Intel for supporting our event this year, which we're very grateful for. And we look forward to following up on this and working with you in the future and returning to Johannesburg next year for our AI Expo Africa 2022. So we hope to see you all then. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
I hope to see you next year in Johannesburg. Thank you.
Indeed. Thanks, guys.